Hello everybody. I would like to talk about an interesting aspect of Frank Zappa's music. Now, I consider him to be among the most interesting artists of the second half of this 20th century. And I say artist because he was not only a composer or a guitar player or musician, he was also a poet, he was a filmmaker, and he was also an artist in that sense, which leaves you wondering how he could possibly have accomplished this massive output over the years. Anyway, I would like to focus on one aspect only, and actually just one or actually two songs that exemplify this aspect. And this aspect is that he was somebody who liked to quote other people's music in his work. Now, I had been listening to his music for many years without really noticing this feat. I just came across that phenomenon because somebody else had found out about it and written about it. And I'm gonna show the website where there's an enormous amount of documentation. It's like pages upon pages of instances where he did actually quote music. Now, as I said, I had been listening to this particular song, which is Don't Eat the Yellow Snow and Nanook Rhapsody, respectively. We are going to get to that a little bit later. So I had been listening to these songs for years and years, actually, and enjoying them without actually realizing that there is a very prominent quote, The Midnight Sun by Lionel Hampton and Sonny Burke. Now I want to say a few words about his quoting and composing technique, i.e. Zappa's. The song I'm talking about, it's on the Overnight Sensation album that came out in 1973 and featured lots of heavyweight soul funk virtuosi like George Duke, for example, Jean-Luc Ponty. You know, crazy lineup. Tina Turner is on this record as well. So anyway, and the title track of the album, the first song is Don't Eat the Yellow Snow. Now that's a story about, as he says, an Eskimo boy, as it goes in lyrics, an Eskimo boy. And it goes, the first line of the lyrics are, dreamed I was an Eskimo. So, and this dreamed I was an Eskimo is immediately followed by a compressed version of Lionel Hampton's The Midnight Sun motif. So it goes. Now, as I said, at the time I didn't know it was a quote. I just thought, well, that's a funny little chromatic angular thing there. And that's what it is. That's what it also is, but it's also a quote. Now, why am I talking about this at length? I am not an American, obviously. I didn't grow up in the United States. I didn't grow up in the 50s or in the 40s. So I'm living in the 90s and I'm listening to this music, and I have no way of knowing that this is a quote from a jazz standard. Now, in that, I'm not the typical audience for this music. A typical audience for this music grew up in America, grew up in the 40s and 50s, like Zappa himself. Now, The Midnight Sun by Lionel Hampton. That's a hit. Lionel Hampton is a jazz superstar at the time. He has his own big band. Ella Fitzgerald records the song. Everybody knows the song. You know? Almost everybody. Because jazz is sort of the popular music of the time. You know? So as I would put it, it's part of the collective unconscious of the American public. Sort of. So Zappa is not simply stealing something from somebody. There is a reason for it. Because this motif... This motif carries meaning. It's a semantical... It's about semantics. The meaning is, you know, well, the title of the song that most probably only came into being, and the lyrics after the song was written. But nevertheless, that's the version that people know. And it talks about a phenomena that occur in the Arctic or Antarctic or whatever. So up in the north. Now, as Zappa goes, dreamed I was an Eskimo. He goes, well, here we are up in the north. And I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that another famous composer who used motifs in order to invoke meaning was Richard Wagner. Actually, he pioneered this technique, or he was the guy who did it first, and to an extent that was very revolutionary. So you have a set of notes, you have a set of chords, you have a characteristic set of notes that are easily, immediately recognizable. And you have your quote that carries meaning. And that's not boring, that's not stealing, that's not simply quoting. There's a reason to do that. And Zappa wants you to know that he's quoting the Midnight Sun. He chooses his quotes from a pool of music that is generally known. And there's one more thing, of course, it also has to be aesthetically appealing. Now Zappa, you could call his music angular and beautiful, certainly, but not in a romantic, conventional way. Now let's look at this melody by Hampton. That's not a typical melody for a standard. As a matter of fact, it's pretty untypical, because it's actually a chromatic scale. Over 12 notes. It's almost 12-tone music. If you want to, stress that a little further. And it must have been also aesthetically appealing. That's what I'm trying to say. So Zappa uses music that he finds aesthetically appealing and that fits easily within the general aesthetic atmosphere of his work. Now, one more thing about that. His aesthetic is formulated by himself. Anything, anytime, any place, for no reason at all. Anything, anytime, any place, for no reason at all. Now, that makes it pretty easy for him to incorporate these snippets of, these foreign elements, because he doesn't have to justify it. It's like, oh yeah, that's Zappa. Well, I don't know. Wait a minute, where did that come from? Ah, it's Zappa. So it's like, well, yeah, that's his aesthetics. Anyway, so, like I said, oh, what? I didn't even realize it was a quote. Well, now, thanks to the work of, these people who are absolutely incredibly astonishing, and without that resource. I couldn't talk about it at all. But what I want to talk about now is how did he do it? Starting into the song, as I said, Zappa goes, dreamed I was an Eskimo. Dreamed I was an Eskimo. It's actually a compressed version of the motif, so it's very fast and it's truncated. Stops here. It's compressed in that way. It's also compressed in that way to fit into a 7/8 meter. So it's kind of mocking the real thing. It's comical. Now, you could argue without going too far. I think that we're in the key of D. What harmony is Zappa inducing here? You could argue if you know that Zappa likes linear minor, which is D minor, which is E major over D minor, then you could argue that this belongs in this harmonic climate. Anyway, it's very different from the original. Now, a little bit later, actually, it's the second song of the album. It's Nano Corrupts It, second 11. When they go, right about the time a fur trapper who was strictly from commercial. The quote comes again. It's the same quote, but it's a completely different situation. We're in 6/8. And he goes, so now it's the correct tempo, it's the correct key signature, time signature, it's the correct groove. Only that he has to insert it, abruptly into a 6/8 meter, because now it's 6/8. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Strictly commercial. It's almost original. The melody is almost original. It's just one interval that has to be altered. It's not a chromatic scale anymore. But it's the same contour. It's exactly the same contour. It's almost unnoticeable, but it's different. But it's also very similar because this chord, that's a B9 sharp 11, should be sharp 11. This chord is the same as this one, A little later in the song, at second 25, is the third time that Zappa quotes the Midnight Sun. Here he just quotes this characteristic seventh leap that originates here. Okay. Played on the xylophone. Well, and that's my first take on this. Hope you liked the video, and well, please subscribe and hit the like button.